I remember when I was in high school, we went to see a Frank Lloyd Wright house up in Schaumburg, I think.
Yes.
And I came home and I announced to my parents that when I grew up, I was going to have a house with no doors, And I had no idea what I was saying. And my mother just laughed and was like, "That's because you don't have any idea what you're talking about."
But you saw what was going on. That's what attracted you to it, right? Say, wow, you can just go from here to there to there. And
the thing that is interesting that I was kind of pointing out in the beginning is I could go to a room or to a building and say, "Hey, that's neat," but it was such a fleeting concept that I wasn't even aware. I am here in this space. Let me soak it all in, right? So as soon as we started the tour in Schaumburg, or as soon as we went to the Unitarian Church, my goal is to get from the point where we start to the point where we end and walk through it and be like, okay, saw the neat room. Like I didn't have an appreciation for it. And it's one of these things that I find to be really important about why people should get mentors and why people should encounter those strange oddities like the Randall Comforts of the world, because I was not naturally drawn to art. I can appreciate it now because I had a mentor that pointed out to me, stand here, look at that, now tell me, what do you feel when you see that? It had never crossed my mind that a painting would make you feel something, or that you could actually pause for a moment, and it would be almost like what I would now consider meditation, and say, all right, I'm going to let this wash over me. But even having had that experience with art, I never converted that to the experience of looking at a building, or being in a building. Just how does it make you feel to sit in this place?
I've had experience like that too. I went to the Frank Lloyd Taliesin in Wisconsin, Frank Lloyd Wright Home and Studio, and there was a tour, and I went on the tour. And I noticed I was walking around, looking at everything, trying to soak it up, and when I walked into this space, I got a certain feeling, and I'm trying to figure out why that happened to me. And so I look around and figure out what he was doing to me, how he achieved what he did. And everybody else, there's a docent walking around with you and reciting interesting things like, the wife was killed here and the fire, stuff like that. And everybody else is like up right next to the docent, looking at them and listening to what they have to say. And the docent will point something out. They'll look over and see it and look back. But I'm walking around looking. I can hear and see at the same time. So I hear what the docent's saying, but I'm experiencing the place. I thought, these other people are missing the entire experience. They're not experiencing it all.
So if
they're just hearing what the docent's telling, they could be anywhere.
So of course the narrative makes the story. It's actually, I think one of the cases that I would make for that would be, it is so much easier for a guest to be able to articulate the narrative of, we went to the Frank Lloyd Wright house where the wife was killed in this spot and it was so interesting, as opposed to, I sat down and, in the great room and I felt this thing. So if you were leading that tour, how would you give people, because people go to have, I would contend that most people go on experiences, not only to have the experience, but so that they can tell someone about it. So how can you help somebody have the experience in such a manner that they could talk about it? Or
yes, I think in the case of the Frank Lloyd Wright house, I saw some things that I think that could be pointed out that they didn't. Like I would have said, like, as we enter this room, notice how the ceiling's only like about 3 or 4 inches over your head. And notice how you feel kind of constricted. You feel like, ooh, it's kind of, that ceiling's kind of low. It's about to hit me in the head. And then when you walk walk a few feet further, all of a sudden it gets higher, but there's windows everywhere too. So all of a sudden you got this interesting sensation of, wow, I was feeling a little distressed there. Now I feel great. Did you notice that? Anybody see that? And then people say, oh yeah, or I didn't know. And they might try it and say, oh yeah, I see what happened there. That kind of thing. I think they could do more of that. And there was another interesting thing at Taliesin. There's a wall that's called the Mistake Wall. And it's on the back of the house. And it's the stone at the bottom, just kind of like stone built up. And then as it gets up, it starts changing as it goes up. When you get to the top, it looks like the stone on the rest of the building, which is very unusual. He had a certain way he wanted to do that. And the docent tells us, he said, well, this is the wall where they started building the building. And Frank Lloyd Wright came out and said, "No, you don't understand. You don't have it." And he told them what else to do. And so they'd leave and come back the next day and they'd build some more. They'd say, "No, you still don't have it." And he would keep this up until they did get it. And he told Esther, I think, wow, that's pretty impressive, because he didn't point it out, but I thought, look at that. All of a sudden, we've got a little bit of history here, a story embedded in stone, Now, most people, if you just looked at it, they think, they didn't do as good a job on the bottom as they did on the top. Oh, well, walk on. But when you hear that story, it's like a story that will last forever. That story's going to be there
it's almost
forever.
like a volcano coming in and petrifying everything here.
Yeah.
And then petrifying and freezing in time there. And you can actually...
So you've got a little time capsule there that'll last forever.
Absolutely.
That story,
Yeah.
that story will all be there as long as the building will be there, that aspect of it.